keeps losing top jobs race. Okay, it's time to dig in and ask ourselves, where are we missing the mark? Losing streak. 2025 Africa Union Commission chairperson Raila Odinga. 2024 we lost headquarters of Loss and Damage Hub. Secretary General of the International Maritime Organization Nancy Karigidhu in 2023. 2023 also headquarters of Africa Continental Free Trade Area. 2022 President of International Fund for Agriculture Development Rachel Omamo also lost. 2020 WTO Director General Amina Mohamed also lost. 2017 Africa Union Commission Chairperson Amina Mohamed also lost. And this is just a feature that opens our eyes to understanding why Kenya keeps losing top jobs race. It goes ahead to say a veteran politician Raila Odinga's recent misadventure in Addis Ababa wasn't Kenya's first. Since 2017, when former Foreign Affairs Cabinet Secretary Amina Mohamed lost to Chad's Moussa Faki Mahamat for the same post of AUC chairperson, more defeats have followed on the continent and internationally. Each of them has been punctuated with concessions, blame games, and supposed lessons for the future. That's a story covered on pages 4 and also 5. Maybe when we check into where we have missed the mark, then we'll be able to correct moving forward. And the back page is covering a story here, quite big. Principals want to raise school fees by 27,000 shillings. Our education is facing a lot of attacks, to be honest, in this season. I mean, this is the third time we are covering something to do with education and things just going up. The first time was the incentive, the exam fee waiver also being scrapped off. Yesterday we covered something to do with medical cover for the students being scrapped off, and today we see that principals want to raise school fees by 27,000 shillings, which we cannot blame them, because again they are not receiving the funds that they need from the government. And
actually that story is also covered inside the Standard on page 10. Tough times ahead as principals out to hike school fees. This is a proposal to hike school fees has sparked concern among parents already struggling with tight household budgets. If adopted, it will see fees in secondary schools increase by up to 20,000 shillings annually. Can you imagine that? So currently I'm looking at the proposals here. If adopted, it would see fees in secondary schools increase by up to 20,000 shillings annually. According to the proposal, parents with children in national schools would be required to pay 73,182 shillings per year, which is an increase from the current 53,554 shillings. This would mean an extra 19,600 shillings. For extra county and county schools, the principals propose that parents pay 68,000 annually, up from the current 45,554 shillings. And additionally, you remember the day schools, currently according to the government it is supposed to be free secondary education. The proposal suggests that students in day schools pay an additional 5,372 shillings on top of the 22,244 capitation provided by the government. And so many questions here, because education is supposed to be the equalizer, even for them who are from poor backgrounds.
That's true.
If this is to go ahead and to be implemented, then what are we saying? Looking at even at the future of students, of those in schools, what will happen to them? And I think this is a very serious situation that we need to look at. I hope, and the unfortunate thing sadly is that the people who are supposed to be pushing for this, who are our legislators, because theirs is to offer oversight and legislation. Those are the two main mandates of these people. I don't hear them speak and highlight the same big way. But I hope and I pray that sobriety at the end of it all reign.
Oh my, this is really unfortunate. And you know, we cannot blame the principals, to be honest.
Because if you look at the
we cannot blame them.
Giving, they are saying that currently, they argue, that is Kesha, they argue the current school fees set under government guidelines no longer reflect the realities of inflation and the rising costs of food, utilities, and essential learning materials. The school heads highlight that the prices of various essential commodities have significantly increased, and they have cited examples there, and so you can read that story on page 10.
And the same, of course, is well elaborated on the back page of the Daily Nation. Let's keep praying for our nation, because at this point we've gotten to that point where we can only pray and hope and believe that if indeed this money does not come from this particular source, which is the government, then God will open a different door for our students to go back to school and keep learning. The unfortunate thing is some secondary schools are even at the verge of closing because of the challenges that they are experiencing. So let's keep praying for God's provision over our children. Moving on the top page, still we have tributes pour in for fallen Kepsha boss. So Kenya Primary Schools Head Teachers Association Chairman Johnson Zioka, who died in a road accident on Sunday, has been eulogized as one of Kenya's most dedicated educators, and may his soul rest in perfect peace, as story covered on page 3. Moving on, I see Ruto yields to Raila on House committees. Allies of Mr. Odinga are now set to take up the leadership of some crucial committees previously chaired by lawmakers from the ruling Kenya Kwanza Alliance. That's a story covered on page 6 following the AUC, voting results, and aid cuts to fuel rise in new HIV infections. So ripple effect for funding reduction on the HIV program will result in a projection of about 60,000 new HIV infections by 2030, says Health CS. This is another quite unfortunate, because now the funding on the HIV program is also being cut off. I mean, you look at the things that are being cut off. They are dire, they are important, they are essential, because now it's like, okay, so now what moves will be taken? So family planning, nutrition, vaccines, and cervical cancer services will also be affected. 31 billion shillings Trump budget cut might fuel 60,000 new HIV cases in Kenya. Look at the implication. 60,000 new HIV cases in Kenya. That's a staggering number, because HIV can be transmitted. So if 60,000 new HIV cases are present, what does it mean for the rest of the people? So indeed, this is also a thing for us to definitely seek the Lord on. Moving on, I see Dramvale saga, Waititu illegal liquidation and 10 billion shillings land. So former Governor lays claim to a prime parcel at the center of a protracted battle involving our society. Chair Maingi rejects former commissioner of cooperatives allegation that he led goons to raid his office and also steal his documents. That's a story covered on page 12. Moving on, I see DN2 powering SMEs here, talking about for suppliers, the tool streamlines the procurement process by enhancing transparency and reliability. So the platform seeks to enhance access to medicine in low-income regions. The Healthy Nation DN2 today, shattering epilepsy stigma from being pushed out of school to being locked up in a house or told to seek spiritual deliverance for people living with a chronic brain disorder. Share their experiences of epilepsy. That's a story covered on pages 4 and also 5. Still on the Healthy Nation is a story covered on page 8 here, saying war on invasive weed swallowing up Kajiado's grazing land. Look at that story in more detail. The international news, Africa pursues economic self-reliance and fair financing. A story covered on page 26. More on the same political commitment to breaking down travel restrictions sought out during summit. The business page today on the Daily Nation is covering 1 in 10 listed for state affordable homes saving on the journey to promoting human welfare and growth, also covered on the business pullout that is on the Daily Nation. Moving on, the back page also is covering Kenya gets guest seat on global money laundering watchdog. The sports pages, Shali Angachi balancing military duty and football, a story covered on page 35. Page 34 is of course covering details to do with the 2025 Magical Kenya Open with just 2 days to go. Final 5 local pros qualify as Kenya's lineup now complete. And that's it for the Daily Nation.
Right. Let's look at the Standard quickly. And they go with the headline. And that's why I'm saying, as a country, yani, our priorities sijui ziko up, because they go with the headline, Taming Raila. So, power play. Even before the dust has settled on Raila Odinga's loss in the African Union race, a push for his appointment as Prime Minister is gaining momentum. Proponents want President Ruto to implement the NADCO report, creating the position in the constitution. Raila's decision could reshape the political landscape ahead of 2027. And you can read that story. It's on page 4 and 5. And a quote here attributed to Belgut MP Nelson Koech of Kenya Kwanza. He says, the Kenya Kwanza administration should look for ways of accommodating Raila Odinga, since he has got vast experience which, if well utilized, can turn around the country for the better.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. Moving on swiftly. If economy is growing, why are Kenyans getting poorer? As the economy grows on paper, the reality for many is stark. A new report reveals rising unemployment, poverty, and job insecurity, with policies failing to create quality opportunities. That's a story that is covered on page 9. And, it's talking about the economy and what is being said about the economy. And yes, on paper, it is growing, but the reality on the ground says otherwise. And then we look at other stories which are being covered inside the Standard. I'm trying to look that one for on education we had looked at. Let's look at the pullout today. It's the Financial Standard pullout, and loans banks fail to self-regulation test. After successfully lobbying for the scrapping of the interest capping late in the law in the last decade, local lenders undertook to autonomously lower the cost of borrowing. But it only took the recent threat of hefty fines for them to comply. It's a story on page 20 and 21. I also see employers move to cushion against higher NSSF rates. That's a story that is covered on page number 19. Even as we wait for the implementation of the new NSSF rates, which are to be rolled out this month. The business section, National Bank sues Nairobi County in 336 million shillings row. The state-owned lender says the devolved unit has refused to honor its end of the bargain. County says it is awaiting the approval of the assembly to facilitate payments. Then I see KRA surpasses target to collect 35 billion shillings from VAT. So KRA has announced that the gross value added tax collections for January 2025 reached 34.55 billion, surpassing the monthly target of 33.995 billion by 556 million shillings. That is the business news section, which is on page 26. Let's go to the world news. UN appeals for 777 billion for Sudan crisis aid as millions face famine. The civil war has displaced the civil war has displaced 12 million people. Those left are subjected to hunger and sexual violence. That's in Sudan. And a detained Ugandan opposition figure briefly hospitalized. We are talking of Kizza Besigye, briefly hospitalized after his health deteriorated following a hunger strike, but was back in prison on Monday. No role for Europe in Ukraine talks, says Russia. That is the world news, which is on page 28. Let's go to the sports pages and the back page. Oh, what a feeling. Spurs coach Postecoglou sympathizes with injury-ravaged Man United. Postecoglou's second season at Tottenham has been ravaged by injuries, and Man United currently occupying position 15 in the league standings. And 4 matches now, Ruben Amorim has won in 14 matches. 14 matches, 4 wins. Hii mipira ya wazungu. I also see Rogers urges Celtic to be bold against Bayern Munich. That is in the return leg of the UEFA Champions League. Looking at local scene on page 38, GSU and KDF lead hunt for Kenya Cup quarter-final slots. The two sides top their respective pools following double wins at the weekend. KDF stand National League champions Kenya Prisons to register second win. That is on page 38. Then I see from football to rugby, Kengo's journey with South Coast Pirates. That is on page 37. Let's look at the business daily, and I see 33 billion Kenya contracts grants axed in USAID purge. Court filings reveal cancellation of 3 contracts, 2 grants. Education, clean energy, civic education have been targeted. That is the story that is covered on the front page and page 2 of the Business Daily. I also see former Cusco boss Ototo wanted for theft surrenders. That is a story that is on the front page and also on page 2. Interest charges on new external loans hit a record high. The weighed average interest rate on Kenya's new external loans rose to 4.6% in the year to June 2024 from 3.2% a year earlier. I also see varsities, TVETs face 59 billion shillings funding hole. Banks see higher defaults on loans, and taxable bond prices rally on falling rates. And I see here a quote: as we frequently hear, the tone is set at the top. So it is the leadership that must act as role models for pursuing the purpose. Mike Eldon, the story that you can read on page number 9. And I also see back page, how to close Africa's digital inclusion gaps. On 38% of continent's population can access internet, with a majority unable to benefit from increasing digitization. That is a story that is on the back page of the Business Daily.
Amazing, and it is 50 minutes past 7. We've come to the end of our newspaper review segment. Grab a copy of your favorite and let's continue to pray for our nation. There's honestly so much that we can pray for today. I think the highlight is, of course, in the education sector. We need to pray for that because there's so much happening in that sector, and I know that most parents are feeling very, very discouraged. But I just want to encourage you that we don't have to depend on the government and on the capitation and on what we see being provided for us by people in the top places. We can believe that God is our source. So no matter what happens, let us look to Jesus, who is the author and finisher of our faith. Let us not be discouraged, but know that God will open doors of income, and He is the source that will never run dry. So we now look at the video of the day. We'll come back and talk about it.